When you play a game, sometimes you just want to get stuff done. Straight to your goal, using all the powers available to you. And you should. But some games allow you to vanquish your opponents in ways that are just too much. Either the game gives you too much power, or the player just keeps spamming the kill move over and over. Blasting enemies to bits is all part of the game, but we have to keep our goals in mind and not just apply force for the sake of applying force. What are we? Beasts? We've collected 10 times in video games, where you as a player are allowed to massively overshoot your target. Sometimes it's funny, but most of these cases of overkill just put them more in morbid.
Stop right there!
Get your splash guards ready for this top 10 cases of absolute overkill in games.
Today's video is brought to you by NordVPN. Use the link in the description and save 70% off a 3-year plan. Switch to NordVPN to protect yourself today.
Let's start with some mild pixel overkill. Black Belt for Sega Master System looks to be a pretty generic side-scrolling fighter, like the earlier Kung Fu Master. Except, the Kung Fu Master seems to be suffering from horrendous back problems. So, what's the overkill in Black Belt? Well, most enemies you hit burst into pieces after a hit or two. And some of the bosses you also have to keep attacking until they burst into pieces. Seems like a bit much for a guy that looks like your standard martial artist in a white gi. This pixel gore was even age restricted to 18 and over in Germany. Turns out Black Belt is a reskin of Hokuto no Ken, Fist of the North Star.
貴様の拳などかほどにも効かんわい。お前はもう死んでいる。何？
In a post-apocalyptic wasteland, all this casual annihilation makes way more sense, right? Enrage is a game that was developed by one guy. This is often a recipe for, pronounced ideas. Enrage is a side-scrolling beat-em-up that puts you into deadly combat with wave after wave of anthropomorphic goons. And a final boss named Atari, who's a jaguar. Get it? Besides the excessive jiggle of the female characters, something else is also a bit overdone. The regular goons can be beaten up to such an extent that they explode into a perfectly clean skeleton. And it doesn't matter what animal you smash straight into the ossuary. Be it a rat, a pig, or a werewolf, every skeleton looks the same. Now that's intelligent design. Not every character has to be some violent brute that rips apart his or her opponents. Sometimes it's a violent brute that rips up the racetrack. The totally modest Suzuki Ecudos SUV, of which the base model starts out with 80 horsepower, was the basis of an over-the-top version in Gran Turismo. This racing version was developed to attack the legendary Pikes Peak hill climb. That 80 horsepower engine in the front was upgraded with a turbocharger, and another one of those was installed in the back, totaling more than 900 horsepower that was sent to the road by four-wheel drive. This insanity gave its real-world driver, Nobuhiro Tajima, the Pikes Peak win in 1995. Now the fun thing about Gran Turismo is that you can pretty much enjoy any car in the higher-tier races, which made the Escudo infamous for being the nuclear option. It was by far the fastest vehicle in the game, which allowed you to defeat any and all legendary race cars they threw at you, totally breaking the game after you acquired this vehicle. But the uncontrollable thrill. Postal II is a sequel that probably shouldn't have been, but we're glad it was released anyway. The title may hint at what kind of game this is. Going postal is a slang term for uncorking all your pent-up violence at work, especially postal workers, who are notorious for this in the United States apparently. The protagonist, called Postal Dude, has to complete some harmless tasks each day. You can complete these tasks in total tranquility and peace. The game's tagline is even, "Remember, it's only as violent as you are." But the potential for violence and cruelty in this game is astronomical. You don't have to play like that, but it would be a waste not to. There's a dog playing fetch with several heads, live cats being used as silencers, urinating on your victims, and even the abomination called Gary Coleman.
Send out the former child actor!
This game makes less sense than Carmageddon. Just way too much effort to provide a player with a huge menu of cruel actions to perform.
With great power comes great responsibility.
If you're a superhero that can punch through walls and jump off skyscrapers without hurting yourself, you've probably got a pretty big advantage over your ordinary flesh and blood crook enemies. If superhero movies were realistic, Superman or Wonder Woman would punch holes through the flesh of their enemies. Imagine the carnage of that T-Rex versus the goat. But superheroes are cool people, so they pull their punches. At least, that's the idea. But in SpiderMan 2 for PlayStation, you can use a pile driver on the crooks from a skyscraper. We're not saying we'd like to see a realistic aftermath, because we've felt queasy once, after we've dropped a plate of very saucy pasta. But the crook just standing there, ready to fight after he just made a 1,000-foot, superhero-assisted drop on his head, just doesn't feel right either. Cruelty potential is an actual thing game devs concern themselves with. But often this factor just creeps into a game as more and more epic features are added. Enter Just Cause. In the first installment, the options were still cool, but limited to a parachute to glide through the air and a grappling hook with a winch to give you speed. By the second installment, though, the devs added the ability to attach enemies to objects, and from there, the possibilities became ludicrous. We're currently at part 4, and the possibilities are endless. You can tether victims to vehicles, each other, to burning vehicles, or to each other's burning vehicle. Want to send someone into a raging tornado on the back of a burning propane tank? You can do that. We don't know why, but you can. Not all violence is inflicted upon living beings. The next game is very, very violent, and mostly without any rhyme or reason. The poor victims? Soccer balls. Touhou Soccer Moshuden revolves around a group of friends that are totally obsessed with soccer. So obsessed, in fact, their power level goes over 9,000. These girls in frilly dresses don't invoke the powers of the gods to save the world from destruction. But they will almost destroy the world to score just a simple soccer goal. In the Fallout series, Bloody Mess is a perk or trait that allows you to do more damage to your enemies than normally possible with a specific weapon. Obliterate, meaning to remove from existence, destroy utterly all trace, indication, or significance of. The Bloody Mess perk totally destroys your enemies. Sounds good. Get them out of your sight as efficiently as possible, and it looks quite satisfying. But there are some drawbacks. If you obliterate your enemies like this in missions that require you to get a specific shot, you will fail the mission. And if you kill multiple enemies like this that stand close to each other, you'll never be able to loot them because you can't determine which body part belongs to which enemy. Maybe sometimes just plain dead is more than enough.
Aim is not important. What is important is what I'm going to do. I just hate this world and these human worms feasting on its carcass.
This game is beyond overkill. When killing is the only thing you do, does it even matter anymore? Hatred is so goth, it shits bats. The protagonist, who looks like the lost brother of Cain and The Undertaker, hates the world and wants to kill and damage as much of it as he can, by shooting and cutting his way to a nuclear reactor to blow it up, all while wearing a long leather coat. And that's the extent of the story. Some violent fantasy of an angry teenager. That's death metal come alive. Obviously created solely to shock the world, Hatred has a lot in common with the original Postal game, which was also isometric, but the unspeakable violence is played completely straight here, adding that feeling of an ease we love and crave. Directly after it appeared on Steam Greenlight, it was removed by the platform with a statement that they would not publish it. But the next day, it was put back up on Greenlight with an apology from Gaiden himself, sent to the team. Though probably not the most refreshing or innovating gaming experience there is, we do appreciate Hatred for how they doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down on a pretty edgelordy concept. Like, come on, the access code to the nuclear reactor is 666. Edgelord ascended. How could you top the gore of Mortal Kombat? How can you rend asunder your defenseless enemy more gruesomely than in the Midway Classic? Ripping out a spine is pretty ultimate, right? Probably in a case of one-uppance, Eternal Champions Challenge from the Dark Side took the gore of Mortal Kombat and cranked it up to 11. In the first place, each fighter can just be whisked away by an interdimensional bully to be executed in the way of their greatest fear. This happens in the form of a full motion video, which was a big deal in 1993, but in the name of cruelty, no expense is spared apparently. Furthermore, each level is a total death trap, with deadly hooks, chasms, and beasts waiting to end each champion in the nastiest fashion. What sets it apart from the Mortal Kombat finishes is the utter lengths, but above all, the incredible creativity of the cruelty of these moves. Who said gore can't be fun? What are these moves called in the game? Overkills. Yeah, we'll drop this mic right here. Well, we're shooked by all the gore and spectacles we've seen. So it's time for us to go outside and smell some flowers, gaze at the beautiful sunset, stuff like that, to wash the mental filth away. As always, we hope you like the insanity we put into lists. Let us know in the comments what you think of the moments of overkill we collected, and please share your own if you think of any. Of course, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. See you next upload.